Prologue. A small whirlwind of dust moved quietly down the deserted street. It whipped a scrap of paper against a sleeping cat, frightening it out of the doorway into the house. Then all was motionless silence. Suddenly a young child hurried around the corner and raced down the empty street. His bare feet kicked up little puffs from the hot earth. "He's coming!" he cried out. "They're bringing him this way!" The people streamed from their houses with the panic of ants whose hill has been struck by a careless foot. The street was alive with thrilled and expectant faces. Their excitement increased as they heard the angry shouts of the approaching mob. A river of men, women, and children flowed noisily around the corner. The young man they were following was overwhelmed by their insults. The mob cried out with delight. They knew he would not escape them. He was a captive. His guards pulled him along in front of the crowd by a long rope tied to an iron collar which was fastened about his neck. He was being taken to the authorities so that his death warrant might be signed. When he faltered in his steps, the guards helped him on his way by jerking savagely on the rope or by planting a well-aimed kick. Occasionally someone would dart out of the crowd, break through the guards, and strike the young man with a fist or a stick. Cheers of pleasure and encouragement accompanied each attacker. When a stone or a piece of refuse hurled from the mob struck the young captive in the face, both the guards and the crowd would burst into laughter. "Rescue yourself, O great hero," one of the pursuers called mockingly. "Break asunder your bonds. Produce for us a miracle." Then he spat in derision at the silent figure. The young man was returned to the barracks square, then a short time later was led to his place of execution. It was high noon in the public square of a sun-baked city. The blistering summer sun flashed from the barrels of the raised muskets. The guns were pointed at the young man's breast. The soldiers awaited the command to fire and take his life. Great crowds were still pouring into the public square. Thousands swarmed along the adjoining rooftops, overlooking the scene of death. They were all hungry for one last look at this strange young man who had so troubled their country. He was either good or evil, and they were not sure which. He seemed so young to die, barely 30. Now that the end had come, this victim of all their hatred did not seem dangerous at all. He appeared helpless and gentle, yet confident and handsome. There was a look of contentment, even eagerness, on his face as he gazed calmly into the hostile barrels of 750 cocked rifles. The Promise of the Messiah. This is the story of a modern search for the Holy Grail, the cup of everlasting life. It began in the land from which the 3 kings came to Bethlehem, guided by a star. It was now the 19th century, and there was another sign in the heavens, a great fiery comet. Many were awed, many were frightened, many were cheered, for both the East and the West were caught up in a millennial zeal. In Persia, home of the 3 wise men, the excitement over the coming of the Messiah was greater than in any other land. In America and Europe, scholars wrote and spoke of the expected appearance of the promised Christ, but in Persia many people were actively searching for him. They believed the promised one to be already in their midst. Among these devout searchers was Sheikh Ahmad, a kindly, gentle man. At the age of 40 he left his home and kindred in one of the islands to the south of the Persian Gulf, and set out to unravel the mystery of the coming messenger. An inner voice kept urging him on. Eagerly he devoured everything written on the subject. He questioned the great religious and scientific authorities until he felt that at last he knew the truth. He was now filled with an eagerness to unburden his soul. He began to search for someone with whom he could share his great secret, his certainty of the time and place for the appearance of God's new messenger, who would fulfill all the promises given in the sacred books. Sheikh Ahmed made his way on foot to the city of Shiraz in southern Persia. Often and passionately in his public talks he extolled that city. Such was the praise he lavished upon Shiraz that his hearers, who were only too familiar with its mediocrity, were astonished at the tone of his language. "Wonder not," Sheikh Ahmed told them, "before long the secret of my words will be made clear to you. A number of you will live to behold the glory of a day which all the prophets of old have foretold and have yearned to witness." There was no one to whom Sheikh Ahmed was able to pour out his knowledge in its entirety. He feared what the people might do to the one whose coming had set his heart on fire. He knew he must wait patiently until a kindred soul appeared with whom he could share his secret. During those days a young man named Syed Kazim was already on his way to visit Sheikh Ahmed. He had heard of this great man and thought perhaps Sheikh Ahmed himself might be the promised one. Syed Kazim lived near a famous tomb at Ardabil. One night in a dream he was told to arise and put himself under the spiritual guidance of Sheikh Ahmed, whom he would find residing at Yazd. Syed Kazim began his journey to Yazd at once. When he reached his destination, Sheikh Ahmed greeted him affectionately. "I welcome you, O my friend. How long and how eagerly I have awaited your coming." To him Sheikh Ahmed confided all that he knew. He urged Syed Kazim to kindle in every receptive heart the fire that burned so brightly in his own. "You have no time to lose," Sheikh Ahmed warned him. "Every fleeting hour should be fully and wisely used. Strive night and day to remove the veils of prejudice and orthodoxy that have blinded the eyes of men, for verily I say, the hour is drawing nigh." By devoting his special attention to his followers, Sheikh Ahmed hoped to enable them to become the active supporters of the cause of the Promised One when he appeared. Sheikh Ahmed knew that the hour of his own death was approaching, so he called his followers together. "After me," he said, "seek for the truth through Syed Kazim. He alone understands my objective." Sheikh Ahmed died soon after, and Syed Kazim became the leader of his followers. Syed Kazim also found that there was no one sincere enough or worthy enough to hear all that Sheikh Ahmed had taught him. His followers were still tied to their homes, their families, their money, their business, and their former beliefs. "If the coming Promised One will exalt us and preserve all we hold dear," they told Syed Kazim, "then we are ready, nay, eager to accept. But if his coming means forsaking all we cherish, and perhaps even facing death, then our ears are deaf to the sweet music." At long last Syed Kazim found one young man in whom he could place the greatest trust. The youth's name was Mullah Hussein. Such was the love and honour that Syed Kazim bestowed upon Mullah Hussein that some among his companions suspected that Mullah Hussein might be the Promised One to whom their master was unceasingly referring, the one whom he so often declared to be even now living in their midst, unrecognized by all of them. "You behold him with your eyes," Syed Kazim told them, "and yet recognize him not." Mullah Hussein returned Syed Kazim's great love and respect. At times he himself secretly wondered whether or not Syed Kazim might be the one they awaited. Mullah Hussein, however, had a standard by which he planned to test whoever made such a stupendous claim. He would ask that a commentary be written upon the story of Joseph, a certain chapter in the sacred scripture, and written in a style and language entirely different from the prevailing standards. One day Mullah Hussein, in private, asked Syed Kazim to write such a commentary. Syed Kazim refused. "This verily is beyond me," he said. "However, he, that great one who comes after me, will, unasked, reveal it for you. That commentary will constitute one of the clearest evidences of his truth." Mullah Hussein asked Syed Kazim why this chapter was called the best of stories in their holy book. Syed Kazim replied, "It is not the proper occasion for explaining the reason," his words hinting that the future would unveil this truth. Another among his followers felt that Syed Kazim, in spite of his denials, was the one foretold. So he went so far as to declare this publicly. Syed Kazim was most displeased. He would have cast the speaker out of the company of his chosen followers had he not begged for forgiveness. "My knowledge is but a drop compared to the immensity of his knowledge," Syed Kazim asserted. "My attainments are but a speck of dust in the face of the wonders of his power." When Syed Kazim made this forthright denial, still another of his followers was very distressed, for he too had believed Syed Kazim to be the great announced figure. He prayed earnestly to God to confirm the feeling in his heart or to deliver him from such a fancy. The manner in which he was assisted is recorded in his own words. "One day at the hour of dawn we went to the house of Syed Kazim. He was fully dressed in his best attire and was about to leave. He asked me to accompany him. He said, 'A highly esteemed and distinguished person has arrived. I feel it necessary that we both should visit him.' The sun had just appeared as we reached our destination. In the doorway stood a youth. His face revealed an expression of humility and kindliness which I can never describe. He quietly approached us, extended his arms towards Syed Kazim, and lovingly embraced him. His friendliness contrasted strongly with the profound reverence which Syed Kazim showed him. He led us to an upper chamber. A silver cup had been placed in the centre of the room. After we were seated, our host filled the cup and handed it to Syed Kazim. He spoke a verse from our holy book. "A drink of pure beverage shall their Lord give them." How great was my amazement when I saw my teacher, Syed Kazim, quaff without the least hesitation that holy draught from a silver cup, the use of which is forbidden to the faithful according to the precepts of Islam. Each guest was given a drink from the cup, and no further words were spoken. Such was the atmosphere of reverence and joy. Soon after, the visitors were escorted to the door and bidden farewell. 3 days later, that same youth arrived to take his seat amidst the assembled followers of Syed Kazim. He sat close to the doorway and, with great modesty and dignity of being, listened to Syed Kazim's discourse. As soon as Syed Kazim saw him, he immediately ended his discourse. One of his followers urged him to resume his talk about the coming of the Promised One. "What more shall I say?" replied Syed Kazim as he turned his face toward the young man. "Lo, the truth is more manifest than the ray of light that has fallen upon that lap." The ray of sunlight to which Syed Kazim referred had fallen upon the lap of that same youth he had so recently visited.
One of Sayyid Kazim's followers asked, "Why is it that you neither reveal his name nor identity of his person?" Sayyid Kazim indicated that if he were to divulge his name, both the promised one of God and he himself would be put to death instantly. Sayyid Kazim had actually pointed with his finger to the ray of light that had fallen on that lap, and yet none of those who were present seemed to grasp its meaning. Sayyid Kazim became increasingly aware of the approach of the hour at which the promised one was to be revealed. There is conclusive evidence that he referred time and again to this event. He was fond of saying, "I see him as the rising sun." He realized how thick the veils were that prevented even his own followers from seeing the truth. He kept warning them, as John the Baptist had warned those who awaited Christ, "The kingdom of God is at hand." With care and wisdom, he gradually began to remove all the barriers that might stand in the way of their full recognition of that hidden treasure when it appeared. "Beware, beware lest, after me, the world's fleeting vanities beguile you," he cautioned them. "Renounce all comfort, all earthly possessions and kindred, in your quest of him who is the desire of your hearts and mine. Detach yourselves from all earthly things, and humbly and prayerfully beseech your Lord to sustain and guide you. Never relax in your determination to seek and find him. Be firm till the day when he will choose you. Well is it with every one of you who will quaff the cup of martyrdom in his path." Sayyid Kazim promised some of his followers that they would not only have the joy of seeing the coming messenger of God face to face, but that they would see his successor as well. He reminded them of the Quranic prophecy, "For soon after the first trumpet blast there shall be sounded yet another call, at which all things shall be quickened and revived." Repeatedly Sayyid Kazim told them that they would not see one but two messengers of God, the twin revelations promised in the Quran and the Bible for the last days. These two successive messengers would be the fulfillment of the prophecy of the second and third woe mentioned in the book of Revelation of St. John, which prophesies that the third woe would quickly follow the second woe. They would also be the fulfillment of the two trumpet blasts mentioned in the Quran, which in the last days would quickly follow each other. Sayyid Kazim assured his followers that after the promised dawn, the promised sun would be made manifest. "For when the star of the former has set," he said, "the sun of the beauty of Hussein will rise and illuminate the whole world." In the last year of his life, Sayyid Kazim left the city of Karbala to visit the holy shrines nearby. He stopped at a prayer house beside the highway to offer his noonday devotions. He was standing beneath the shade of a palm when suddenly an Arab appeared. He approached Sayyid Kazim and spoke to him. "3 days ago I was shepherding my flock in this adjoining pasture," he told Sayyid Kazim, "when sleep suddenly fell upon me. In my dream I saw Muhammad, who addressed me in these words, 'Give ear, O shepherd, to my words.' In this dream the Prophet instructed the shepherd to stay within the precincts of the prayer house, saying that in 3 days a man, Sayyid Kazim by name, would arrive accompanied by friends. The shepherd was to tell him, 'Rejoice, for the hour of your departure is at hand. When you shall have returned to Karbala, there, 3 days after your return, you will wing your flight to me. Soon after shall he who is the truth be made manifest. Then shall the world be illuminated by the light of his face.'" The thought of Sayyid Kazim's approaching death saddened his companions. He comforted them with these words, "Is not your love for me for the sake of that true one whose advent we all await? Would you not wish for me to die that the promised one might be revealed?" To his last breath, Sayyid Kazim urged his followers to persevere in their search. He returned to Karbala, and on the day he arrived he became ill. 3 days later he died, just as foretold in the shepherd's dream.